everybody. This week we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take stock of who are the members of our local clan, the ones that we know of, based on our experiences, our sightings, our findings over the last few years. The first time that I went up the trail behind the cabin 25 years ago, I found a really clear footprint and a couple of broken trees, and at that point I knew the Bigfoots were real, but at that point, I didn't realize there was a whole family living here. I thought it was just one lone individual passing through. Then, about 10 years ago, I was out in the yard one day, and this black ball of fur fell out of one of the tops of one of the trees over the cabin. And it had no wings, it had no tail, and I had no idea what it was. It was just this curled up ball. It looked like a monkey doing a cannonball is what it looked like. It dropped straight down out of one of the tops of the trees, hit a limb, went over the roof of the cabin to another tree, dropped down to another limb, back over the roof of the cabin where it hit the corner of the porch roof, and then it was gone. Now, I figured this was probably maybe average somewhere around 10 years old, more or less. You know, it wasn't all that big. It was pretty small. So if that was 10 years ago, and it was a 10-year-old creature at the time, that would probably be either an older adolescent or young adult now, at approximately 20 years of age. Okay, now we're going to jump ahead to November 1st of 2012. That was the day that I saw the big guy going after the elk. And this is at the top of the hill, just below the top of the ridge where we were hiking to, where we sat down to take a little break, and Gabby's looking in the direction of the strange talking that we were hearing that at the time we weren't sure what it was. Mutant German hunters maybe, something weird anyway. So we know that there were at least two individuals on the hillside below us right here when this happened, and then just minutes later, there was a growl grunt right behind me where I was sitting. Now, that could have been three individuals, but we can't rule out that one of the ones below us hadn't moved up behind and made that grunt. So we know there was at least two there, if not three, that were right there at that time. Okay, so going back down the hill, we're about halfway back down, and that's where we hear the whistles. There's one immediately to my left, and then another right after that, just down below us. So I know there was at least two individuals there at that time. So was that the two that I had heard talking a little farther up the hill earlier? Probably. Okay, so then just a few minutes later, down the hill, that's when I saw the big guy going after the elk. Now, this one was big. When I say big guy, really, really big. This is a picture that I drew at the time of what I saw that day. And it did appear to be coming from the opposite direction of where the whistles had been, and so I don't know if this is maybe the same one that was up on the top of the hill that was behind me that grunted. Was this one of the ones that was talking? I've always thought of this one as being Daddy, the big guy, because he was gnarly looking. This is a artist rendering of what I saw, and this is a little more human than what I saw. It needed to be a little bit more apish, but he was definitely gnarly and he was big, so I've always thought of this one as being Daddy. And also he had what appeared to be a receding hairline between the bony ridges over his eyes that were reaching back over the front of his cone. There was no hair there. He had no hair on his face and none above his eyes, as though maybe a receding hairline. So I'm not sure if that's a particularly male trait for them to not have hair on their face or to have a receding hairline, but that's what it seemed to be to me. It was really difficult to get an exact height estimate for him because the only thing to really go by was the leaves on the that were left on the vine maples that were in front of him. And by the time I went back up there, all the leaves were down on the ground, so all I had to go by was the little twigs and everything. But even going by that, I would say he had to be close to 10 feet tall. Another reason that I think he was a male. Also, a couple of weeks later, I took a friend up there, and we walked the path where I had seen this one go, and just below it, there was a puddle with just a little bit of water over some silt, and we found a very clear footprint that looked close to 20 to 22 inches. It was unbelievably huge. Unfortunately, it got messed up before we had a chance to actually measure it, but it was so big. We counted all 5 toes clearly, and then you look for the heel, and you look, and you look, and you look, and you look, and then finally you see how far away that heel is, and it's just stunning. And I've always been under the impression that this was the same footprint that came from the big guy that I saw chasing the elk, that was from that individual. So just a few weeks later, we got this footage of 17-inch footprints that had come down off the almost vertical hillside, and they had come across this flat area going out to the river. And I know it's really poor footage, but right here, if you look, you can see where they come in line, and then right about here they hesitate, they slow down, and you can't really tell, but it stopped along the water's edge for a while. There was a patch of snow that was all just mashed down there, and then later on we found where they had come out on the other side and gone off into the swamp. Now these were 17-inch tracks, although they had been a little melted and snowed over. Was this Mama? Is this the mother of the group? Okay, so these tracks were found the day after I found 12-inch footprints crossing the creek just up from the cabin. And most of the prints that I found that winter were 12 inches. These were the only times that I found anything that was bigger than that. There was the occasion that I was out at night, and there were 3 of them that came at me from 3 different directions. 2 of them I never found any tracks for, I only heard them, but the third one, the one that was pushing down the trees, that left a clear line of 12-inch footprints coming down the far side of the creek. So that was another example of having 3 individuals that were there around me at one time. Okay, now we're going to move ahead to the end of March of that same year. I took a hike up the side of the mountain, and as I approached the same spot where I had heard the whistles back in November, that's where I saw the man-sized juvenile leaping through the treetops. Now, this was bigger than what I'd seen jump over the cabin, but considerably smaller than the one that had been going after the elk. When we checked the area around the trees, underneath the first one that I had seen it jump from, we found this 12-inch footprint, and just ahead of it was a handprint. Now, I can't say for a fact that these prints were made by the individual that I saw up in the tree, but he was about the right size. He was, the size of a large man, and that would, you would think, be about a 12-inch footprint. So I've always assumed that they were from the same one, although at the time I did hear other movement, something else was there leaving. And also, when we searched the area, we found a lot of smaller prints, and I had been thinking that there was a younger juvenile in the area for a while, just based on some things that I had found, some smaller prints that weren't very clear. But yeah, at this point, that was the first sign that I had that we still had a really young one in the area. So then our next encounter was just a few months later, just along the trail. Once again, it was an encounter with 3 individuals. There were 3 of us going up the trail. It was Anna, my boss's grandson Sterling, and I, and there was just a sudden burst of activity beside the trail, and each of us saw something different. We were each looking in a different place. What I saw was just the weeds and the bushes and the plants and stuff just getting mowed over, although I never did see what was mowing them over. Anna saw something that was large and upright farther back, stepped behind a tree. But what Sterling saw was something he described as something not much bigger than Gabby on all 4s. It was right next to the trail. He said it looked right at him, turned, leaped over a log, and was gone. So that right there was our first sighting of one of the smaller individuals in recent times. After that, it was more than a year before our next sighting, but we did still have plenty of activity. We were still hearing a lot of vocalizations and finding footprints. And as an example of odd footprints that didn't seem to fit in with anybody we knew in particular, we found 2 11-inch footprints about 3 weeks apart and about 100, 150 feet apart. One was coming out of the swamp on one side, and the other one was coming out of the creek on the other. And the second one, this one here, we thought was odd because of these 3 leaves that were placed next to it. And yeah, this one was also right next to a broken tree where Sandy had just seen something leaping out of a tree just a few weeks before. She didn't actually see it. She saw the tree and heard it, but she didn't see what it was. So right about the same time period that we were finding those 11-inch tracks, we had the pair at the gifting area that turned up with the big teeth marks in it. And 20 minutes later, after I found that pair, I was at the other gifting area making a video when this got caught on camera. Now watch up here in the corner. You see that knob on the stump? It just disappeared. Okay, so here it is again. Now watch that stump. It isn't actually a stump, it's a root wad. Gone. So when we put a guy up there in a blue shirt, you could clearly see a blue shirt through the roots of that root wad. So whatever was there was black and at least the size of a large man. Okay, so now we're going to move ahead to the end of summer of 2014 and our first experiences with a brown or a reddish individual. Up to that point, all of the sightings had been of black individuals. And this here is the trail cam picture that Juanita got when she mounted it on the back of my dad's motorhome. And if you look right there on the very left edge of the screen, you'll see the hair. Okay, so this picture was taken 3 days after my friend Chris had seen one looking in her window that she described as an auburn-colored juvenile. And up till this point, all of our sightings had been with black individuals. So this was new for us. Could this be the individual that had left the 11-inch footprints? Could be. That could account for that, maybe. Okay, so now it's just a couple of weeks later. We're up the trail with our campers from our September Barb and Gabby campout. We're just having a little tour of tree structures, and this is when the Cloaker Event happened. This is when I had my next and last sighting. So we're standing around showing everybody this tree when about 75 feet in front of me, you'll see right here in a minute, I'll point, I see something pop up, not a big creature, it's black, it's got a domed head, a triangular shape because it has no neck. It just pops up and takes off to the left, and it disappears behind this tree you see here. Then I see it come out on the other side when I lean over, and it was just mowing stuff over and then just vanished. We later figured down into a hole between some logs. So anyway, I'll show you the original footage now.
You know,
yeah,
like a thrust and not a hang, you know what
yeah.
I'm saying? Because
something hard and fast.
On it for any amount of time,
the heck was that? Did you see that?
Sand's been.
Okay, here it is slowed down and zoomed in so you can get a better look at it. Now you see it drops down and there's a log right there behind it. I think when it came up from behind that log is when I actually saw it. Now we found 2 sets of 9-inch footprints leading away from that spot behind that log where I saw it pop up. So we have suspected that there were actually 2 that were there together and dropped down and went under the log. One went straight back, and in Thinker Thunker's redo of it, you can see where there are trees that are being bent in the background. That was in the path of the one set of 9-inch tracks. The other set of tracks went in the direction of the one that I saw that was mowing stuff over and dropped down into the hole. So, yes, we believe that there were possibly twins now. We have 2 individuals of the same size. And at the exact moment that the one I saw disappeared, one of our other campers who was sitting up on the trail looked over, and just beyond where this happened, she saw what she described as a baby come down a tree head first and disappear into the bushes. So right there, now we've got a sighting of a baby. Okay, now I'm going to share something with you that I've never shared before. Outside of our group, nobody's ever seen this. This is thermal footage that was taken just a couple of weeks after the Cloaker Event. I've never shared it because it's not very clear. You can't really see what's there very well. Unfortunately, our thermal camera doesn't record quite as well as you can see through the lens. What I was watching that night was considerably clearer. So here's what happened. I was on my way home. I was coming across the bridge, and I could see eyes shine down on the corner. So I go around the corner, I look, I don't see anything there, get to the cabin. Gabby's freaking out. So I put her inside, I grabbed the thermal camera, and I just walked out to the edge of the driveway and looked down that way. First, what I saw was just one individual. What really got my attention was the triangular shape that it had. It wasn't huge, but it wasn't really small either. The triangular shape was so similar to the shape of what I had seen pop up and run off during the Cloaker event. So as I'm watching, I see a second one come out, and they're kind of moving around together. And then what really got me was then there was a third one, a tiny little one that was exactly the same shape as the other two, came out, walked right between those two, and went off into the bushes. Well, at that point, I went from taking pictures to taking video, and unfortunately, the little one never came back out again. So while I'm watching, I can see them moving, and you can't really make it out very well here. But at one point, I saw what looked like an arm reach out and up away from a body, the one that's the closest to on the left side there. So anyway, I was hearing something in the woods beside me. I turned the camera, looked that way, looked back, they were still there, and then my arm was falling asleep. So I lowered the camera for just a second to switch hands, and when I put it back up again, they were gone. So anyway, here's a picture of what I had drawn in to represent more what I had seen, and then here's Sandy and I in the same place. Okay, so both of these individuals were exactly the same size. They had one tiny baby with them in October. I can't think of any wildlife that would have one tiny baby with them in October. They were the right size, they were the right shape, and I'm pretty darn sure that these were the two individuals that were there for the Cloaker event, twins, with the baby that was seen coming headfirst down the tree. Okay, so another interesting little side note about this is when I went out, I took the iPod with me and I turned it on to record and just left it on the picnic table to pick up any sounds that might have happened while I was out there. So I was with the thermal camera, forgot about the iPod completely, went back in the cabin, and it was a few minutes before I remembered I had left it out there. So I went back out, got it, and when I listened to it, I was surprised to discover that just seconds after the door closed behind me, after I came back in, there were 2 owl calls were heard from outside. And I suspect that was their way of signaling that I had gone back in. Okay, so now what we know is we have Dad, the big guy that was going after the elk. We have Mama, who I suspect left the 17-inch footprints, and whose voice has been heard talking to her children on a couple of occasions, or at least that's how it's been reported. And we have the older juvenile, young adult. We have twins who are approximately 10 years old. We have a baby who's, well, probably toddler-ish when the Cloaker event happened, so a young child now. And we have the brown one, the auburn-colored one that was seen. We also have Oso, Chris's visitor who comes to visit her, who has the awful stink. And we wonder if Oso is the same one that we encountered upriver 8 miles during our camp out last June, when we experienced the same awful stink that she describes. So we have to wonder, is this group here just on this mountain? Do they roam the whole valley? Are they other individuals up there? So we also need to take into consideration all the sightings of the creature that looks like Gabby, the small black 4-legged creature that's really fast that's been seen. I've seen it myself a couple of times, once up here at the gifting area, and then a few days later Chris saw it at our campsite a few miles upriver for our May camp out. And then again in June, Sam saw what she thought was Gabby running around the fire pit. So, you know, I suspect that the one that I saw was maybe the baby, bigger now, Is the ones that we're seeing upriver, is that different youngsters, different family, or is that the same ones that are just moving up and down the valley? Are these the ones that are playing with Gabby? You know, we know that she has a buddy out there now, and we suspect that's one of the little ones. Would that be one of the twins, or would that be the baby that's her new friend? Because she still shows signs of being not really comfortable when the bigger ones are around. So, anyway, this leaves us with lots of questions yet to answer, and hope you stick with us for the ride. We're gonna hopefully make a whole lot more discoveries ahead, and yeah, I'm expecting a great year to come. So thanks for watching. Bye.